Okay, so I have to analyze the tutorial again. This time we're going to be doing Warthunder. One thing about Warthunder is it's a very complex game, so there is a lot to explain in a tutorial. Now, when a new player to this game would start up their game and log in, a pop-up will come up in the screen, quite large. It takes up this whole space, and it says, "Would you like to would you like to do a tutorial?" And it comes up with tank and plane. And you click either one, and it'll take you to the basics of basics for that, for either tanks or planes, whichever you pick. But because I have played this game quite a lot, I don't have it. So we'll go up here to tutorial. Now, Warthunder has a lot of tutorials because there is a lot to go through in this game. It's massive. And not only do they have normal tutorials, but they also have advanced tutorials. So for normal tutorials, we've got for fighter, attacker, and bomber, and takeoff and landing for aircraft, tank control basics and tank gunnery for tanks, and motorboat control basics for boats. The advanced tutorials, you've got takeoff and basic flight controls, aerial combat and landing, central takeoff, carrier takeoff and torpedoing, and dive bombing and carrier landing. I like that Warthunder has advanced tutorials for things. A lot of games just throw the basics at you and go, you know how to play the game, work everything out yourself. But because Warthunder is large and there is a lot to know, it's nice to have advanced tutorials, especially for things like carrier takeoff, torpedoing, dive bombing, and carrier landing, because they're quite difficult things, especially the carrier landing and torpedoing. You have to be, a certain speed, a certain altitude, have to aim specifically, that kind of thing. But for this video, we are just going to go through the basic tutorial course, tank control basics. Alright, here we go.
Welcome to one of Warthunder's training areas. Here, you will learn how to control your vehicle.
Okay, so straight away as we come in, there is a narrator speaking while we're here, and also a pop-up in front of us of some text, which this text is what the narrator was speaking about. So it's quite nice. It's got both visual and auditory aspects to it. Spawning in a large area. Okay, we're supposed to continue.
Begin moving forward.
Yeah, so step 1 out of 3, moving the tank, and WS is ASD to move the tank. So
Follow the waypoints to the firing area.
Alright, so we've got a waypoint pop up. Also at the top left, as you can see, pops up and says you can see information about the number of gears, engine RPM, and the speed of your tank here. So it's nice that it comes up and shows that, because most people would not realize that's there immediately, and it's also nothing you would completely explain about. So it gives you a bit of an open area to drive around in, but we'll just go straight for the waypoints. Basically a direct path, nowhere else to go. It's cornered off on each side, large markers.
In the lower right corner, you can see a mini-map which shows your tank as an arrow. It also shows the position of your enemies and allies as icons. Your opponent this time, a training target, is the red icon on the map. Your allies' icons are blue.
So, speaking about the minimap, telling us about the enemy tank, your tank, and the allied tank. I like that. I think it's quite a good thing that they've put arrows and some text explaining, because the minimap is quite small, and for people that might not be able to see very well, it's quite It's quite a bit of a contrast of color with the arrow, so it's easy to see what you're referencing and what it's pointing to.
You can see several markers on the screen. The cursor, which the turret of your tank follows, the marker indicating the direction of the tank cannon, and the crosshairs that shows where the tank shell will hit. Take into consideration that the mouse aiming cursor is not a gun sight and only serves to help you turn the tank turret in the right direction. You should not shoot without waiting for the tank turret to align itself with the opponent. If you want to hit the enemy tank, wait for the turret to turn towards the opponent. Align the crosshair with the target. It will change color when it is over the opponent. And fire.
Okay, so talking about the cursor and everything there, it's so talking about the cursor and everything there, they go in and tell us to take consideration that the large circle is where your mouse is pointing and not actually where your turret is pointing. It's quite a good thing to touch on, as people starting this game wouldn't actually know that.
Move the cursor over the indicated tank.
Alright, so come up to move the cursor to the tank, and it's also showing here, it's explained that the large circle is where your mouse is and not where the turret is, but here you can actually see it in action. So you move your cursor around, but the turret is staying still, it's locked for this small bit. The also shows us where we need to move it to. The screen has darkened quite a bit, and the only thing that is illuminated is this tank over here. So move our cursor.
Wait until the tank turret finishes rotating and the weapon sight to be aligned with the cursor. Switch to gunner view. You can use zoom to get a better view of the target.
It's good that they put these two kind of controls next to each other, because it kind of indicates that is the natural way that a player would do that. So, and they're right next to each other as well on the keyboard, Shift and Z. It's kind of a nice thing to put it there, saying this is what you should do.
The aim assist indicator in the center of the screen shows where the shell will strike when you fire a shot. It turns red if the current shell cannot pierce the armor, yellow if it is possible to pierce, and green if your shell can easily pierce the armor.
Okay, so as you can see, it's green now. If we move it around somewhere, there we go. It goes red, which means we can't penetrate. And on this tank, we cannot get a yellow marker. But the yellow marker means that there is a possibility of it piercing the tank.
Depending on your target's armor thickness, the aim assist indicator changes to various colors.
And right as I say it, it pops up. So as it's popped up there, it goes into a bit more depth of what it is. I guess they didn't want to go and explain it because that would have taken too long, but it's nice to have a little bit of extra information up on screen.
One of the best ways to destroy a tank is to put its crew out of action. Move the reticule over the central area of the tank. Now, fire at the fighting compartment on the tank.
Even though it says to place the cursor over the center part of the tank, and it's pretty straightforward where the center is, especially with the flashing silhouettes of where the crew members in a tank would be, it would still be nice to have an actual circle or a square or an indicator saying, this is where you should shoot a tank to do the most damage.
When a shell penetrates armor, the X-ray window appears in the top right corner. This shows which parts of the tank and which crew members took damage. The enemy tank is considered destroyed if it has no crew members remaining inside. Great! If there was any crew in this vehicle, they would be in big trouble. Now, switch to third-person view. Another effective way of destroying, or at least immobilizing a vehicle, is to damage or most armored vehicles have their engines at the rear. Continue by moving the reticule onto the rear of the indicated tank. Now, switch to gunner view and fire at the tank engine. If the engine, ammo rack, or fuel tanks inside the tank are damaged, this may cause an explosion or start a fire. Good job! Move on to another Capanier. Now, you have to complete a real combat assignment. Capture and hold a strategic point. You can see a marker above the capture point. If the marker is white, this means that the point is currently neutral. Move to the capture zone.
Alright, so as we're moving to the capture zone, I'll just go over a little bit about what I think about that. It was quite linear, laid out. I liked how a bit more information about some things popped up on the screen, even though the narrator didn't speak about it. One thing I would have liked is about modules, because modules is quite a large part of this game, but they didn't really go into it. I would have liked them to touch a bit more instead of just shoot the engine.
To capture the point, you must drive into the capture zone. The border of the capture zone is delineated by a white line circle or square on the ground.
Alright, let's drive in.
Your tank has reached the indicated point, but you can't capture the zone while it still has enemy vehicles in it. Destroy the enemy tank.
Alright, that was a bit of a sequence break there. I would have rather them kind of link it together. I think it would have been better if they explained about capturing in a different sense, as if the enemy was capturing and you had to come and get it. But let's destroy this tank here.
Great! You destroyed the enemy, and now you can capture the zone. Wait for the marker to turn blue, and for a message to appear notifying you that you have captured the zone. The capture zone's marker has turned blue. That means the zone now belongs to your team. If the enemy team had captured the zone, the marker would have turned red. Capturing strategic points is one of the main methods of winning a battle. When one team captures more strategic points than the other team, the enemy team begins to lose points. Victory is achieved when the enemy team loses all its points. So, always try to keep control of the strategic zones. Great job! You won! Now you're a true tanker.
Alright, mission accomplished. Seems like that's the complete tutorial. And now we're getting taken back to the hangar. Alright, so looking back on the tutorial, I think it was laid out incredibly well. It was a very direct, in sense of like movement. It was very direct from start to finish. There wasn't really many places you could wander around except the start, and maybe towards the end when capturing the point you could wander around a bit. But other than that, it was pretty start to finish kind of tutorial. A lot of the information that was in the tutorial was precise. It was... They didn't like waffle on, they didn't try to explain too much. They only gave the player what they needed to know to start the game. There were a couple of instances where some pop-ups of text came up with a little bit extra information, like the RPM and speed at the top left at the start. and also about the red, orange, and green markers when pointing toward the tank. Like I said earlier, I would have liked it if they went more in depth about modules, as it is quite a large aspect of the game. Maybe shooting out a tank's cannon, or maybe taking the track off so they can't move. We kind of got that with the engine, but they didn't really go into too much depth. But I think because there are so many tutorials, it would be in this tank gunnery course, which is to be expected from such a large game. As I also said, moving from shooting tanks into capturing, I think they could have done that a bit better to kind of explain the fact that you need to go into a point from somewhere to capture it better. So say the tank that was in there started capturing the point, and it said you have to go over there to recapture it from the enemy. It would have made the sequence moving to the capture point a bit better. It would have been a drive to go there, except instead of just a hey, go here kind of thing. But other than that, the tutorial was well laid out. The information was to point. There was not too much information, so the cognitive load on the player was not too much. It was quite simple. And some of the things used within the tutorial was quite good, such as using the darkened screen and a bright square to direct the player's attention to what is being referenced, like moving the tank turret to each of the tanks, looking at the giant heads-up display of the A point, and also the HUD display of tickets and capture point up the top center of the screen. So all in all, a good tutorial, would reference for any other game looking to do a good tutorial.